Welcome to this new deep dive. Today, we're diving into something really fundamental, our emotional needs, and how those very first bonds, the ones we formed way back, might still be pulling the strings in our lives, sometimes in ways we haven't quite pieced together yet.
Yeah, and the question we're really getting into today, the one our exploration has sort of brought up, is this. Why do some of us find it so incredibly difficult to be alone?
Right.
And we're not just talking about, feeling lonely now and then. This is more of a persistent, almost like a gravitational pull towards needing someone, needing companionship, and this deep emotional reliance on others.
Yeah, I think many people can relate to that, either feeling it themselves or seeing it.
Exactly. It's something many of us have either experienced ourselves or, witnessed in those around us.
And the core of what we want to unpack here in this deep dive is this idea of the mother complex. It's a concept from our source material. And it looks at how our earliest caregiving relationships, those really foundational connections, can shape our adult emotional landscape. And crucially, our ability to feel, complete and whole just on our own.
That's the crux of it.
Okay, so to really get started, what exactly is this mother complex that our source delves into?
Well, according to Jung, the mother complex essentially takes root when that initial relationship with our primary caregiver. And it's important to understand, as our source really emphasizes, this isn't necessarily just the biological mother.
Right, not necessarily mom.
No, it could be anyone who really filled that early nurturing role. When that relationship doesn't quite integrate in a healthy way within our psyche, that's where it starts.
So it's going deeper than just remembering if you had like a strict parent or a lenient one? Is that the idea?
Precisely, yeah. Our source makes it really clear that it's not about judging whether that caregiver was objectively good or bad.
Okay.
Instead, it's about the profound emotional imprint that this very first fundamental relationship leaves on us.
An imprint.
Yeah. And how that imprint goes on to influence how we see ourselves and how we navigate all our relationships later on. What's really interesting here is that this complex isn't just about whether we like or dislike someone. It's a much deeper, ingrained emotional pattern. And it can actually get in the way of our ability to be truly independent within our relationships.
Right. That makes sense. So let's get specific then. How does this mother complex actually, show up in our day-to-day lives, especially when we're talking about this fear of being alone?
Well, our source highlights that individuals sort of operating within this complex often have a very strong, almost primal need, you could say, to be cared for.
Okay.
To constantly receive attention, and almost to find someone who can step into that early maternal role again.
Yeah.
But in their adult lives.
Like recreating that dynamic.
Exactly. And this can show up in a number of ways. You might see significant emotional dependence in adult partnerships, for example. A real fear of solitude that goes beyond just, preferring company. A persistent seeking of external validation for even small things. And often a noticeable struggle to set and maintain healthy boundaries with others.
It sounds almost like an unconscious replay, doesn't it? Like those early childhood dynamics just keep repeating, this constant reaching for that initial kind of care.
That's a very insightful way to put it, yeah. At its heart, there's often an unconscious search for a love that feels repairing. An attempt to find that unwavering security and nurture that perhaps felt incomplete or maybe inconsistent in those early years. And our source makes a really crucial connection here. This deep inability to be alone isn't just about disliking your own company.
Right.
It's often profoundly linked to an underlying feeling of losing a fundamental sense of protection and security.
Wow, okay. That really shifts the perspective. It's not just, I'm bored when I'm alone. It's tapping into something much deeper, a real insecurity.
Exactly. And this can unfortunately lead to things like staying in relationships that aren't healthy, just to avoid that awful feeling of being alone, or a tendency to over-adapt, constantly trying to match what we think others expect of us, hoping to be liked and cared for.
People-pleasing almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And even a persistent fear of abandonment that can linger, even when there's no clear or logical reason for it right now. Our source actually gives some very relatable examples of how this might play out.
Oh, okay. Like, what sort of situations are we talking about?
Well, it describes scenarios like consistently needing a partner's approval to feel okay about yourself.
Yeah.
Feeling a sense of emptiness or real unease whenever you're physically alone. Or even, and this is kind of paradoxical, engaging in controlling behaviors within a relationship.
Controlling. How does that fit?
Well, as an unconscious strategy to feel loved and needed. Almost by taking on that caregiver role themselves, trying to ensure the other person needs them.
Ah, I see. That's a really interesting flip, trying to fulfill your own unmet needs by kind of mirroring that early dynamic with someone else.
Precisely. And this is where our source brings in Jung's concept of emotional transfers, which is absolutely key to understanding why these patterns can be so persistent, so sticky.
Okay, emotional transfers. Let's delve into that. What's that all about?
Essentially, these are unconscious psychological processes.
Yeah.
It's where we start seeking from the people in our adult lives, could be romantic partners, friends, even colleagues.
Right.
Seeking the emotional sustenance or experiences that we didn't fully get or didn't fully integrate from our primary caregivers back in childhood.
So it just keeps playing out.
It can, yeah. As our source points out, this pattern can unfortunately replay itself across a whole spectrum of our relationships. It's interesting, too, the source material also mentioned how, with families being more spread out geographically these days, that can sometimes intensify this tendency for emotional transfer, especially onto romantic partners, perhaps.
So without even realizing it, we're kind of casting people in our current lives into these old roles from our past, hoping they'll finally give us what we missed back then.
That's a very good way to frame it, yeah. And our source poses the really fundamental question when we think about these transfers. Are we genuinely seeking love and authentic support in our relationships now? Or are we perhaps, on a deeper, more unconscious level, just trying to fill a void inside ourselves? A void that actually started much, much earlier in our lives.
Wow. That's a powerful question that really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? So if someone listening recognizes some of these patterns in themselves, what direction does our source material point us towards? How do we move forward?
Well, our source strongly emphasizes Jung's concept of individuation. That's presented as the fundamental pathway, really, to moving beyond the grip of the mother complex and other sorts of ingrained patterns that might be limiting our emotional freedom and our well-being.
Individuation. Okay, it sounds like becoming more of an individual, more distinct. But I guess there's more nuance to it than just that simple definition, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot more to it. Our source describes individuation as a lifelong journey. It's the process of truly becoming our authentic selves.
Lifelong. Okay.
Yeah, by bringing together and integrating all the different aspects of our psyche, both the conscious parts we know about and the unconscious stuff, the hidden or maybe repressed parts. It's a continuous process of deepening self-awareness and, really crucially, learning to accept all facets of ourselves, even the bits we might find uncomfortable or, less desirable.
So it's not about chasing some kind of idealized perfection, but more about embracing the whole messy picture of who we actually are.
Precisely. That's exactly. And our source underscores that this journey of individuation is what ultimately allows us to shift away from that emotional dependence we were talking about earlier,
right,
and move towards a greater sense of emotional autonomy and psychological maturity.
That sounds like such a profound and important kind of growth. I think many people would resonate with wanting that. So, what are some of the, practical steps that our source outlines? How do we actually navigate this path of individuation, especially thinking about the influence of something like the mother complex?
Okay, yeah, our source provides several key steps. The first one is recognizing the shadow.
The shadow.
Yeah. This involves becoming aware of and acknowledging those parts of ourselves that we tend to repress or deny or just don't want to look at.
The uncomfortable bits.
Exactly. In the context of the mother complex, this could be those unacknowledged feelings, like a deep fear of being alone, or that persistent need for external approval to feel worthy.
Okay.
A practical way to start this, as our source suggests, is to really reflect on moments when you feel particularly vulnerable, or when you notice yourself feeling compelled to sort of cling to someone out of a fear of feeling incomplete without them.
Noticing those triggers.
Yeah, noticing those triggers is the crucial first step in understanding your shadow aspects.
That makes sense. Identifying those feelings is the starting point. What's the next step our source highlights?
The second step is accepting emotional needs. Now, this can sometimes feel a bit counterintuitive, Our culture often really values independence, as if needing others is somehow a sign of weakness. But our source directly tackles this. It states that acknowledging our basic human needs for love, support, connection, that's not weakness at all.
Right.
It's actually an act of self-compassion and really a hallmark of emotional maturity. The key, though, is learning to meet these fundamental needs in healthy, balanced ways, without putting the entire burden onto other people.
Okay, so how do you do that practically?
Well, a practical step here is to actively explore ways to nurture and care for yourself independently. So consciously carving out time for activities you genuinely enjoy on your own. establishing a consistent self-care routine that really nourishes you, and cultivating supportive relationships that are based on mutual respect, not dependence.
That's a really important distinction, isn't it? Healthy interdependence, not just total isolation or leaning too heavily on others. Okay, what's the third step on this journey?
The third step is working on emotional autonomy. As our source explains it, this is the process of developing the capacity to be emotionally self-regulating.
Self-regulating.
Yeah, to act from your authentic self, guided by your own values and beliefs, rather than being constantly swayed by fear, insecurity, or that overriding need for external validation.
Okay, and a practical step for that.
A practical step here is to consciously try to identify your own emotions as they come up, without immediately trying to push them away or needing someone else to say, oh yes, it's okay to feel that.
Just acknowledging them for yourself.
Exactly. And starting to make decisions, big and small, based on what you genuinely value and desire, rather than just on what you think others might expect or approve of.
That sounds incredibly freeing, actually, but also like it would take consistent effort and a lot of self-awareness.
Well, it certainly can be challenging, no doubt. Yeah. But the rewards, in terms of inner peace and actually having stronger, healthier relationships are pretty significant. The fourth step involves exploring internal archetypes. We've talked a bit about the mother complex, which relates to the mother archetype.
Right.
But our source reminds us that within each of us, there are other universal patterns of behavior and imagery. These archetypes like the hero, the sage, the inner child, loads of others.
Okay.
Individuation involves becoming more aware of and integrating these various aspects of ourselves to achieve a greater sense of inner wholeness. Think of them as sort of fundamental patterns.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you consistently find yourself playing the rescuer in your relationships, that might be an expression of the hero archetype within you. A practical step here is to reflect on which archetypes seem to be most dominant in your life right now, and consciously work towards fostering a healthier balance among them.
That's a fascinating perspective, looking at these inner patterns influencing how we act. Okay, what's the fifth step our source outlines?
The fifth step delves into the integration of the feminine and masculine aspects of our psyche. This is what Jung called anima and animus.
Anima and animus.
Yeah. Regardless of our gender identity, we all possess both traditionally feminine qualities, things like receptivity, emotionality, and traditionally masculine qualities, like assertiveness, logic, within us. Our source emphasizes that acknowledging, accepting, and integrating these seemingly opposite aspects is absolutely crucial for the process of individuation and for achieving inner harmony.
So integrating both sides, how would you do that practically?
Well, a practical step is to actively explore and embrace parts of yourself that you might have previously denied or suppressed.
Yeah.
So, for example, someone who traditionally identifies as male might explore and express their sensitivity more.
Okay.
Or someone traditionally identifying as female might embrace their assertiveness and decisiveness more consciously.
So it's about moving beyond those maybe rigid gender roles within ourselves and becoming more integrated, more whole in how we express ourselves.
Yeah, got it. And what's the final step our source points to?
The final step outlined in our source is seeking meaning and purpose in life. Jung believed that individuation wasn't just a psychological thing confined to our personal development.
Oh, okay.
It also had a significant spiritual and philosophical dimension. Discovering a sense of purpose that goes beyond just societal expectations and is deeply connected to the integration of all our diverse inner parts that's considered a key aspect of this whole journey.
Finding that deeper meaning.
Exactly. So a practical step here is to engage in some deep reflection about what truly gives your life meaning. What are your core values? And then honestly assess. Are you currently living in a way that really aligns with those fundamental aspects of yourself and your deepest aspirations? So after this really insightful deep dive into the mother complex and, well, this profound journey of individuation, it really prompts you, doesn't it, to consider how these early dynamics might still be playing out in your life today.
Absolutely.
You know, what patterns or maybe unmet needs have come into sharper focus for you as we've explored all this?
Yeah, this exploration, drawing directly from our source material, it really does offer such a valuable framework for understanding a very fundamental dimension of our emotional lives. It's truly an invitation, I think, for each of us to take a closer look at our inner world and the way we connect, or maybe sometimes struggle to connect, with the people around us.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for engaging in this journey of inner exploration with us. Yeah. You're such an important part of this community, really, and it's always a privilege to learn and grow together like this.
It really is.
If this deep dive has resonated with you in any way, please consider sharing it with someone who might also find it helpful. And maybe leave a comment about any insights you've gained. Your experiences and reflections are truly valuable to all of us.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any of our future deep dives. And hit that notification bell so you're alerted whenever we release a new exploration. We really look forward to continuing this journey of self-knowledge and personal growth with you all.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.